What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. And speaking of being back, you know what? It's good to be back. Even though, hey, you can't complain about a couple of days at the beach. It is a nice break. The gaming news, it just never ends. And in fact, we have a bunch of stuff to go over here today, which does include a wild update to that Switch 2 banning situation. As it appears, one person ran into this and, in fact, found a solution. So I figure, hey, if anyone else runs into it, good to know exactly what to do. Also, we do have Sony, who did go over Ghost of Yotei in a recent State of Play, and I wanted to go over some of the cliff notes from that presentation. And we have Nintendo ending what was a very popular, it seems, a very consumer-friendly, we'll say, program when it came to their vouchers, and it was a way for people to save quite a bit of money, but at least people wondering now what exactly they have in store for us with the Switch 2, if anything at all. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're gonna start today with an update for Romero Games. Now, this was a studio that kind of got caught up in a lot of the funding and cutting that happened at Microsoft over the last week or so, as we saw games getting canceled, studios shut down, and, well, these different contracts that were written up being cut down. And in fact, Romero Games was part of that. It seemed like they were not only canceling their game, but the studio was just closing. Well, not quite. We can see this update that they had issued. They did mention that funding for their project was pulled, and their game was canceled, and that due to confidentiality agreements, they can't say who exactly that was, but I think we can figure out the publisher was just based on all the stuff that happened all at once here. And they do mention that right now they have to reassess the entire staffing of their studio. However, Romero Games is not closed, and they've been contacted by several publishers interested in helping them bring the game across the finish line, and they're currently evaluating those opportunities. So, I mean, one of the worst case scenarios for Microsoft is that this game does come out, and it's incredible. It's amazing. I mean, it's an FPS that's being done by a studio for John Romero. You assume all of that lines up, and you figure everything, all the components there to make a good game. But if it's incredible and Microsoft ended up cutting back on it and like that was it, cut funding, that'll look really bad for them. So maybe there's a little extra motivation for Romero Games to really push forward with this one. But for now, they have to explore their options, and fortunately for them, there are some there. Also, we did get the announcement for STALKER 2 going to PlayStation 5. This was part of a trailer that was posted by IGN, and here they say it will be released on PS5 and PS5 Pro in late 2025. They also mentioned the PS5 version will fully utilize DualSense controller features, including haptic feedback and adaptive triggers for deeper player immersion. Further technical enhancements for the PS5 Pro are also in development. Now, I didn't necessarily get really into STALKER 2. It just didn't really click with me. However, STALKER fans really seem to get a kick out of it, and it was a game that definitely pushed the Xbox Series X, I'll say quite a bit, maybe to its limits. So it does make me wonder what the PS5 Pro can maybe get out of this game. But if I had to take a guess, maybe a one-year timed exclusivity that was going on with Xbox and Game Pass, so that came out, what, November of last year? So maybe November 2025, it comes out here for the PS5. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. Oh, and we did get an update from Naughty Dog, but not one the internet was necessarily overly excited about. Kind of mixed reaction here, and I get it. Naughty Dog hasn't exactly been releasing a lot of new stuff recently. They've been talking a lot about The Last of Us, and that continues. You can see in this PlayStation blog post, introducing The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered Chronological Experience. It's out now, and the free update lets players experience Ellie and Abby's story chronologically and also includes unlockable skins and trophies, which you can see the skins here. You play as Joel dressed as Nathan Drake and Tommy as Sam Drake in No Return. And I know, look, it's a free update, so okay, what's the big deal? Why people be annoyed? It's because, I mean, Intergalactic's out there for Naughty Dog. We assume it might be a 2027 game, but this is that situation of when they have games canceled, like The Last of Us multiplayer, and with how long it takes development, I mean, this is kind of what you get for a while, are free updates for games that have been out for a while and people have played through multiple times, people have bought multiple times, and they do like the remaster of it, and that's kind of where we are. So here's hoping maybe that's that other game that's being worked on. Apparently there's 3 games in all right now. One of them, here's an Uncharted crossover, so maybe that's part of it, and then Intergalactic. But for now, hey, free update for Last of Us Part 2, just in case you wanted to play through it for like the 8th time. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2 ban situation that's been discussed at length online, specifically because it seemed to be a problem around the MIG switch. And I mean, you look at the MIG switch, people naturally online have been downloading games. There's a big file out there that's just kind of passing titles around, even though it's the same ID for each game, but it's out there. People are loading them up and they're getting banned on the Switch too, which, yeah, that all adds up, makes sense. Something that's been done since really most of the beginning, since systems have been connecting online. You hack a system to then load backups and you play online with it. You're probably going to get banned at some point doing that. However, the Make Switch itself seemed to kind of just trigger the system in general, Nintendo servers. Even if you had your own backups, that was the one that was kind of tripping a lot of us up. And now something that I was concerned, and many other people brought this up, the idea that maybe you buy a used game that somebody decided they were going to dump and then either use on their Make Switch down the road or even pass around to some other people for them to use, as it looks like someone ran into this. This we can see is over on Reddit. And they mention they got banned and unbanned after simply downloading patches for 4 Switch 1 games they bought from Facebook Marketplace. So these are secondhand games that they had purchased off of a person, unknowingly, obviously, that it had been used maybe to dump the game or anything like that. Okay, so here's the good news. They figured out what to do here, and Nintendo seemed to work with them on this one. Now, we've been through this with some of these customer service lines before where, let's say you buy a game by accident, they'll do that thing where like, I'll do it for you this time, okay? But the next time, we're gonna have a problem then. So they mentioned though how all this went down. They inserted the game into their Switch 2 one by one and they waited to patch. That was the other day. And then the next day, they turned on the console and was told that their online services were restricted. They couldn't even download things for their games, they mentioned. And after contacting Nintendo Support, they found out that the system had been banned. So how exactly did they work this out? Well, while talking to that Nintendo customer service agent, they had to pull up the Facebook Marketplace listing and take some pictures of the cartridges, which, okay. So I guess with their phone and then send them the images of it. Now, look, I will tell you this. Nintendo does tend to collect a lot of data on some of these things because they're always trying to figure out, again, we know legally and stuff that's always a thing, but I feel like they're always trying to figure out things that have to do with their products that could affect them in the long run, like we're seeing here. Now, the other part of this is Nintendo does tend to request proof of purchase of games, so you might have to show them a receipt, or even just online listings. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go, hey, we're going to fix that for you now. They might go, well, too bad. But I feel like in this case, it seems like Nintendo is trying to resolve many of these banned Switch 2 systems that just kind of happen. It's not, if the person called and was like, hey, I used this Make Switch after I downloaded a bunch of games, they're probably not going to unban it. But I've even seen some mention that they had a certain name that they put that wasn't like super offensive or anything, and it was banned, but apparently that wasn't why, and then Nintendo fixed it for them. So these Switch 2 bans seem to be happening sporadically, and at times, sure, they're tied to a used game like this, but also it seems at times it's just like kind of it's just almost a mistake on the system end with the networking. So if it happens, you obviously want to call Nintendo and see what your steps are from there, maybe even explain the situation, whether it's a used game or it just started happening after you renamed your account and went online with it. But there we are. The thing that I was concerned could happen, something that I'm sure has happened throughout the Switch 1's life after that Make Switch was really introduced to market, has happened here with the Switch 2. So I'm not really sure how to tell you other than be careful when you buy used games, but how do you even test for that without just getting your Switch 2 banned? I'd hate for the used market around this to really dry up because that's a great way usually to save money when you buy secondhand, as opposed to Nintendo doesn't drop the prices on their digital games. But here we are. I will say I do think right now that the Make Switch stuff is still like a small number of games out there would be affected by this. And yeah, that means you kind of drew the short end of the stick on this one if you run into it. But I don't think it's something that's super widespread and that most people should have to consider. But again, we'll see as this generation continues to go if it ends up being something that's more common than it is now. Next up, let's talk about those Nintendo Switch vouchers. They had already told us, that being Nintendo, that they weren't going to work on the Switch 2. So it did seem like the writing was on the wall and eventually they'd be cutting these down, and now it looks like they're doing that. I still think the most egregious part, though, would be the gold coin. In terms of the reward stuff, I think that was the thing that I would miss the most here, are the gold coins, because getting those back as rewards for purchases and being able to use them on, say, a brand new Switch 2 title, that was awesome. And the voucher thing is still good because it saves you basically $20. So 2 new titles from Nintendo that would normally be $60, $60, $120 comes out to just $100. And then you have a time span of being able to use them. So you can buy a voucher, now 2 vouchers, and use them and redeem them later, say for like a Pokemon Legends game or a new Mario game or something like that. Well, we can see this over on Nintendo's site where they made the update. And they say the discontinuation of Nintendo Switch game vouchers, that will happen as of 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, January 30th, 2026. You'll no longer be able to purchase those Switch game vouchers. Any vouchers you purchase on or before that date will work exactly as they currently do. Unused vouchers expire 12 months after the date of purchase, which means I guess the last day you'd be able to really use one would be January 30th, 2027 if you buy it on the day that they're discontinuing in 2026. Now, I will admit, I wasn't someone who took advantage of the voucher program because if I were to, I feel like I'd be mostly digital when it comes to a lot of the games from Nintendo, and typically their first-party games, I do like to get physically. And looking at the Switch 2 lineup currently, just from how trends have been with third-party and first-party, the first-party games are probably the ones I'm going to have mostly physical, since Nintendo, they are putting the games on the cartridge. Whereas it seems like every time a third-party game gets announced, we figure the game key card symbol is going to be there, or code in a box is going to be there. So it's very rare to get a Cyberpunk on like the third-party lineup. So here with Nintendo Switch 2 games, I figured, in that case, yeah, physical there. But this is still a great way for people to be able to buy games, just save money outright. And I'd like to think that Nintendo has something in store for what could end up being more $80 games being introduced into the marketplace. After Mario Kart, you figure the next big 3D Zelda game or the next big 3D Mario game would most likely warrant that price tag from Nintendo's point of view. But if there's no voucher system, it's going to be even more difficult for their customers to be able to buy those games day one. It was just a nice thing to have, and it's unfortunate that Nintendo is pulling it for the Switch 2 generation, but I have to see if they have something else planned. At this time, though, we can't necessarily assume they do because there's really nothing announced right now to replace it. Next up, let's talk about Ghost of Yotei, as we had a state of play yesterday. Ran for about 20 minutes or so and gave us a pretty good look at the game, how it plays, and even some new hardware to look forward to. Let's start at the top here, though. Now, they did talk about Atsu and sort of the backstory here. Now, she's known as an Onryo in this world as a wrathful god bent on revenge, and that is pretty straightforward, as there is the Yotei 6 that she's working to track down, and they basically just killed her family. So now she's on this quest for revenge to, I guess, hunt down each of these Yotei 6 and get revenge. Now, they showed that when you're going through the game, it looked like there are certain parts, they have almost this ability to press a button, you go back in time to view certain events, and then you could go back to the present, and I assume that's going to be certain walled off areas where they have this figured out, so you can jump between the 2 time periods. Kind of a cool idea. They have a clue system. It gives you things to investigate in the open world, so you kind of break out your telescope and look around, and you'll find things. You have cards that keep track of your quests, and you'll get more and more as they're uncovered. They do have these altars of reflection in the open world, and they unlock abilities. And it's really all about exploring the world kind of at your own pace, the way that they described it. So I don't know if they were going for the Elden Ring kind of feel where it's like, hey, here's a world, go do your thing. It's kind of like what they were getting at here, though, with this. So I almost wonder if the Yotei 6, you can kind of go and pick out which one you want to do first, and sort of in any order, I guess there. Does make me a little concerned about how they're going to approach the story with this thing, and are you going to have certain events that need to happen after a certain member of the Yotei 6, and we'll see when it comes out there. They do have different weapons you can master: katana, dual blades, adachi, spear, others were all shown here, and Atsu is not bound by honor or a samurai code. I mean, she is just like using every dirty trick in the book. Doesn't matter. Whatever she needs to do to win, basically, and complete her revenge. Now, they did show some dismemberment in the game as well, which is great. Makes the weapons feel even more powerful. Showed ranged weapons, bow and arrow, a kunai, bombs, rifles. You have a wolf companion, which is kind of cool. They briefly showed your wolf, and that was kind of it. And you can set up camp, and vendors or upgrades, they'll come straight to you. So, seem like they're trying to make the open world feel a bit more streamlined, because yes, you can get open world burnout, and that is more common than not with games that are huge and take, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours to get through. You can customize weapons and armor, even change up the look, and you have almost like you can be a stealth character. You can be someone who's ranged combat. You can be like a full-on katana wielder who's in the action immediately. They had photo mode, they had full Japanese voice track with lip sync, that's all included. They had a black and white or a film grain filter, which looked really cool. And they did a lot here with the presentation, sort of to reflect like the samurai film. So it does appear you can get very cinematic with the styling in this game. And they also showed off a limited edition PS5, a controller that's out with the game on October 2nd. I think the game looks good. I do. It's not surprising me or shocking me or overwhelming me or anything. But it also doesn't look like something they messed up. They didn't mess up the Ghost of Tsushima formula. I do think one of the big parts about Ghost of Tsushima, though, was the struggle that Jin Sakai had with the honor system. Like, is he going to be the ghost? Is he going to be the honorable samurai? And he really struggled with that. And that was a big thing for the players to decide which way they wanted to go with it. Here, though, it seems much more straightforward, and it's more about how do you want to tackle these things as stealth, or do you just want to be like full on, like up front, run through the wall if you can and just destroy everyone? So it doesn't necessarily seem like there is that moral kind of dilemma there. I almost wonder if that's going to make Atsu's character feel a bit more shallow, but we'll see when it comes out. At least I think the gameplay looks good. The world looked incredible at times when they were showing it off, and that's kind of what I expect from Sucker Punch with kind of the Ghost franchise. It was some impressive looking stuff with Ghost of Tsushima like 5 years ago now. So yes, I expect a game that's going on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro to look even better. And I'm looking forward to October 2nd when I pick this one up. Will I get the controller or the play? I don't think so. I mean, I have a lot of DualSense controllers. This isn't a game that's like, oh, I gotta get all the accessories and stuff for it. But I think it looks pretty cool. And if you're someone who is really into Ghost of Tsushima, you're probably gonna be picking that up. Maybe even a PS5 finally. This might be the game that really pushes you over the edge, in which case, at least they have some of that hardware there. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium tiers for the month of July. We can head over to PlayStation Blog. We can see now they have a couple different dates we can go over. The big one, though, they show off Cyberpunk 2077 is available to play right now. So that just launched immediately into the service on July 9th. They have Abiotic Factor, that's launching into the service July 22nd. And then all other titles will be available July 15th, so next week. Again, at the top, though, Cyberpunk 2077. If you have not played this game, I fully recommend it now, especially if you have PlayStation Plus Extra, since they have been doing a lot of updates since the game came out, what feels like forever ago, but like 4.5 years ago. They did their big update 2.0. There's also Phantom Liberty out there. That's the DLC you can look into if you enjoy this game. But it's a massive game. Like, it's one that you can spend hundreds of hours in, and people have. So a lot of work's gone into it. I will at least give CD Projekt credit on that one. And it's a much better game now because of it. And there we go, it going into PlayStation Plus. Abiotic Factor, which I really don't have much experience with at all. I mean, it's a multiplayer open world survival crafting genre. So they mentioned 6 players. There you go. You get some people together, have some fun. Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, that's on the PS5. Bluey, the video game, that's PS5 and PS4. Planet Zoo on the PS5. Risk of Rain 2, PS5 and PS4. Tropico, PS5 and PS4. New World, I have not played New World at all. People seem to get a kick out of it and enjoy it. Others seem to really hate the game, so I don't know. It's on the PS5. I don't know if I'll have time for it. That's the other big thing. There's so many games I'm trying to play right now. Moving to PlayStation Plus Premium. This is the one where I'm always like, oh, come on, Sony. Get something good in here. I think they did. Twisted Metal 3. Hey, PS5 and PS4. And Twisted Metal 4. So there we go. Rounding out the PS1 titles for Twisted Metal here. It's cool to see all of those get thrown into the service. So I think, in general, pretty good month for PlayStation Plus in July. Again, if you have not tried Cyberpunk, it's there. I think it's worth at least booting up with all the updates and the work they've done to it to see what you think. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you used Nintendo's voucher program for the Switch when buying new games? Okay, 74% have not. 26%, though, have used it. I also saw many people in the comments say, no, but I used gold coins. I wish they'd bring that back. And look, I think that's something that's really missing. A rewards program like gold coins or a discount service like vouchers. It seems strange because we're going into a generation where we're expecting games. I mean, we're starting the generation with Nintendo now. We're halfway through, we'll say that. Halfway through, maybe a little more for PS5 and Xbox. And it feels like it's halfway through. But even then you go, well, $80 games, clearly Microsoft's doing it with Outer Worlds 2. Nintendo's done it with Mario Kart. Sony's eventually going to do it. So game prices continue to go up. You like to see something like a voucher program to at least give some sort of relief to these prices. Even gold coins, like, well, I'll get something back and then eventually I can use it to discount an $80 or $70 game. But nothing right now. So here's hoping Nintendo has something planned for the future, but I guess we'll see there. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Zen Gamer. It says, these companies aren't pouring money into AI just so we can pay $20 a month for an AI chat buddy. They're doing it to get rid of employees. This is the big fear. Is that AI is going to eventually replace like 90% of the workforce, just not the 10% at the top in the high-rise buildings who are making all the decisions with the suits on. I get that. The thing that I'm seeing right now that there are a lot of concerns would be entry-level positions that are just completely covered by AI. So there's really no path from, we'll say, like college or grad school, anything like that, into the workforce for new hires, right? That's the concern. And then it starts to work up the chain of command, and eventually you do get 30 or 40% unemployment. And the question then becomes, well, if a lot of people can't work to get money to then spend in the economy and on these companies, what happens to those companies? That, again, that's the whole thing about artificial intelligence, AI, AGI, ASI, the super intelligence, where it just solves all of our problems, becomes incredibly smart. Who knows what the future looks like with that? But it's disruptive, as I mentioned, one way or the other. Either an incredible amount of money, $500 billion, will just be burned by these companies trying to make it work, or it will work and it will completely disrupt everything. It'll turn all the stuff upside down. We might have robots walking around as waiters and might be flying around as the Jetsons up in the clouds. Who knows? But yeah, it's very uncertain times. Even in the near future, the next 5 years could look completely different. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed the last Newswave I did earlier this week, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see an accessory for the Switch 2 that I'm not really sure how many people are necessarily buying it, but of course, I wanted to open it up and check it out anyway. I'll leave that in the video right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.